It was a characteristic she'd encountered in the auto trade and in technology, in the ones the others all gravitated to. Charismatics. We've got a place to stay a bit up the road for tonight. It's about a half-hour walk. It's indoors and there's toilets, but maybe not much to make beds out of. Take what you can carry for about a mile, you can come back tomorrow for the rest. You don't have to come, but this isn't going to be any fun tonight. A woman came forward. She was young, but not young enough to be a homegirl. She had long dark hair and she twisted her hands as she spoke in a soft voice to Francis. What about our stuff? We can leave it here tonight. It's all we've got. Francis nodded. We need 10 people to stand guard in 2 shifts of 5 tonight. Young people. You'll get flashlights and phones, coffee and whatever else we can give you. Just keep the rubberneckers out. The rubberneckers were out of earshot. The account they'd get of this would come from the news anchor who'd tell them how dangerous and dirty this place was. They'd never see what Suzanne saw. 10 men and women forming up to one side of the crowd. Young braves and homegirls, people her age, their faces solemn. Francis oversaw the gathering up of belongings. Suzanne had never had a sense of how many people lived in the shantytown, but now she could count them as they massed up by the roadside and began to walk, 100, a little more than 100. More if you counted the surprising number of babies. Lester conferred briefly with Francis and then Francis tapped 3 of the old-timers and 2 of the mothers with babes in arms and they crammed into Lester's car and he took off. Suzanne walked by the roadside with the long line of refugees, listening to their murmuring conversation, and in a few minutes, Lester was back to pick up more people, at Francis's discretion. Perry was beside her now, his eyes a million miles away. What now? She said. We put them in the workshop tonight, tomorrow we help them build houses, at your place. You going to let them stay? Why not? We don't use half of that land. The landlord gets his check every month. Hasn't been by in 5 years. He won't care. She took a couple more steps. Perry, I am going to write about this. She said. Oh, he said. They walked further. A small child was crying. Of course you are. Well, fuck the landlord. I'll sick Kettlewell on him if he squawks. What do you think Kettlewell will think about all this? Look, this is what I've been saying all along. We need to make products for these people. They're a huge untapped market. What she wanted to ask was what would Jan say about this, but they didn't talk about Jan these days. Kettlewell had promised them a new business manager for weeks, but none had appeared. Perry had taken over more and more of the managerial roles, and was getting less and less workshop time in. She could tell it frustrated him. In her discussions with Kettlewell, he confided that it had turned out to be harder to find suits than it was finding wildly inventive nerds. Lots of people wanted to run businesses, but the number who actually seemed likely to be capable of doing so was only a small fraction. They could see the junkyard now. Perry pulled out his phone and called his server and touch-toned the codes to turn on all the lights and unlock all the doors. They lost a couple of kids in the aisles of miraculous junk, and Francis had to send out bigger kids to find them and bring them back, holding the treasures they'd found to their chests. Lester kept going back for more old-timers, more mothers, more stragglers, operating his ferry service until they were all indoors in the workshop. This is the place, Francis said. We'll stay indoors here tonight. Toilets are there in their orderly lines, no shoving. What about food? Asked a man with a small boy sleeping over his shoulder. This isn't the Red Cross. Francis snapped. We'll organize food for ourselves in the morning. Perry whispered in his ear. Francis shook his head, and Perry whispered some more. There will be food in the morning. This is Perry. It's his place. He's going to go to Costco for us when they open. The crowd cheered and a few of the women hugged him. Some of the men shook his hand. Perry blushed. Suzanne smiled. These people were good people. They'd been through more than Suzanne could imagine. It felt right that she could help them, like making up for every panhandler she'd ignored and every passed-out drunk she'd stepped over. There were no blankets. There were no beds. The squatters slept on the concrete floor. Young couples spooned under tables. Children snuggled between their parents, or held onto their mothers. As the squatters dossed down and as Suzanne walked past them to get to her car, her heart broke 100 times. She felt like one of those Depression-era photographers walking through an Okie camp. A rending visual at each corner. Back at her rented condo, she found herself at the foot of her comfortable bed with its thick duvet. She liked keeping the AC turned up enough to snuggle under a blanket and the 4 pillows. She was in her jammies, but she could DNT climb in between those sheets. She could DNT. And then she was back in her car with all her blankets. Sheets. Pillows, big towels, even the sofa cushions, which the landlord was not going to be happy about, and speeding back to the workshop. She let herself in and set about distributing the blankets and pillows and towels, picking out the families, the old people. A woman apparently able-bodied and young, but skinny, sat up and said, "Hey, where's one for me?" Suzanne recognized the voice. The junkie from the IHOP. Lester's friend. The one who grabbed her and cursed her. She didn't want to give the woman a blanket. She only had 2 left and there were old people lying on the bare floor. "Where's one for me?" the woman said more loudly. Some of the sleepers stirred. Some of them sat up. Suzanne was shaking. Who the hell was she to decide who got a blanket? Did being rude to her at the IHOP disqualify you from getting bedding when your house burned down? Suzanne gave her a blanket, and she snatched one of the sofa cushions besides. It's why she's still alive. Suzanne thought. How she's survived. She gave away the last blanket and went home to sleep on her naked bed underneath an old coat, a rolled-up sweater for a pillow. After her shower, she dried herself on T-shirts, having given away all her towels to use as bedding. The new shantytown went up faster than she dreamed possible. The boys helped. Lester downloaded all the information he could find on temporary shelters building out of mud, out of sandbags, out of corrugated cardboard and sheets of plastic, and they tried them all. Some of the houses had 2 or more rickety-seeming stories, but they all felt solid enough as she toured them, snapping photos of proud homesteaders standing next to their handiwork. Little things went missing from the workshop's tools, easily pawned books and keepsakes. Perry's wallet, and they all started locking their desk drawers. There were junkies in among the squatters, and desperate people, and immoral people, them too. One day she found that her cute little gold earrings weren't beside her desk lamp, where she'd left them the night before, and she practically burst into tears, feeling set upon on all sides. She found the earrings later that day, at the bottom of her purse, and that only made things worse. Even though she hadn't voiced a single accusation, she'd accused every one of the squatters in her mind that day. She found herself unable to meet their eyes for the rest of the week. "I have to write about this," she said to Perry. "This is part of the story." She stayed clear of it for a month, but she couldn't go on writing about the successes of the home aware without writing about the workforce that was turning out the devices and add-ons by the thousands. All around her, in impromptu factories with impromptu workers. "Why," Perry said. He'd been a dervish, filling orders. Training people, fighting fires. By nightfall, he was hollow-eyed and snappish. Lester didn't join them on the roof anymore. He liked to hang out with Francis and some of the young men and pitch horseshoes down in the shantytown, or tinker with the composting toilets he'd been installing at strategic crossroads through the town. "Can't you just concentrate on the business, Perry? This is the business." Kettlewell hasn't sent a replacement for Jan, and you've filled in, and you've turned this place into something like a worker-owned co-op. That's important news. The point of this exercise is to try all the different businesses that are possible and see what works. If you've found something that works, I should write about it. Especially since it's not just solving Codicil's problem, it's solving the problem for all of those people. 2. Perry drank his beer in sullen silence. "I don't want Kettlewell to get more involved in this. It's going good. Scrutiny could kill it. You've got nothing to be embarrassed about here," she said. "There's nothing here that isn't as it should be." Perry looked at her for a long moment. He was at the end of his fuse. Trying to do too much, and she regretted having brought it up. "You do what you have to do," he said. The original shantytown was astonishing. Built around a nexus of trailers and RVs that didn't look in the least roadworthy. The settlers had added dwelling on dwelling to their little patch of land. They started with plastic sheeting and poles, and when they could afford it, they replaced the sheets, one at a time. with bricks or poured concrete and rebar. They thatched their roofs with palm leaves, shingles, linoleum, corrugated tin, even plywood with flattened beer cans. Some walls were wood. Some had windows. Some were made from old car doors, with hand-cranked handles to lower them in the day, then roll them up again at night when the mosquitoes came out. Most of the settlers slept on nets. A second wave had moved into the settlement, just as I arrived, and rather than building out and farther away from their neighbors' latrines, water pump and mysterious sources of electrical power, they built up, on top of the existing structures, shoring up the walls where necessary. It wasn't hurricane-proof, but neither are the cracker box condos that property owners occupy. They made contractual arrangements with the dwellers of the first stories, paid them rent. A couple with second-story rooms opposite one another in one of the narrow streets consummated their relationship by building a sky bridge between their rooms, paying joint rent to two landlords. The thing these motley houses had in common, all of them, was ingenuity and pride of work. They had neat vegetable gardens, flower boxes, and fresh paint. They had kids' bikes leaned up against their walls, and the smell of good cooking in the air. They were homely homes. Many of the people who lived in these houses worked regular, service jobs, walking 3 miles to the nearest city bus stop every morning and 3 miles back every evening. They sent their kids to school, faking local addresses with P.O. boxes. Some were retired. Some were just down on their luck. They helped each other. When something precious was stolen, the community pitched in to find the thieves. When one of them started a little business selling sodas or sandwiches out of her shanty, the others patronized her. When someone needed medical care, they chipped in for a taxi to the free clinic, or someone with a working car drove them. They were like the neighbors of the long-lamented American town, an ideal of civic virtue that is so remote in our ancestry as to have become mythical. There were eyes on the street here, proud residents who knew what everyone was about and saw to it that bad behavior was curbed before it could get started. Somehow, it burned down. The fire department went to investigate, because this was an illegal homestead, so they didn't much care about how the fire started. It took most of the homes, and most of their meager possessions. The water got the rest. The fire department wouldn't fight the fire at first, because someone at City Hall said that the land's owner wouldn't let them on the property. As it turns out, the owner of that sad strip of land, between an orange grove and the side of a 4-lane highway is unknown. A decades-old dispute over title has left it in legal limbo that let the squatters settle there. It is suspicious all right. Various entities had tried to evict the squatters before, but the legal hassles left them in happy limbo. What the law didn't accomplish, the fire did. The story has a happy ending. The boys have moved the squatters into their factory, and now they have live work condos that look like something Dr. Seuss designed. Photo gallery. Like the Central Park shantytown of the last century, these look like they were constructed by crazy poets and distributed by a whirlwind that had been drinking. As a press account of the day had it, last year, the city completed a new housing project nearby to here, and social workers descended on the shantytowners to get them to pick up and move to these low-rent high-rises. The shantytowners wouldn't go. It was too expensive, said Mrs. X, who doesn't want her family back in Oklahoma to know she's squatting with her husband and their young daughter. We can afford any rent. Not if we want to put food on the table on what we earn. She made the right decision. The housing project is an urban renewal nightmare, filled with crime and junkies, the kind of place where little old ladies triple chain their doors and order in groceries that they pay for with direct debit, unwilling to keep any cash around. The squatter village was a shantytown, but it was no slum. It was a neighborhood that could be improved. And the boys are doing that, having relocated the village to their grounds. They inventing and remixing new techniques for building cheap and homey shelter fast. Profile 10 shanties and the technology inside them. The response was enormous and passionate. Dozens of readers wrote to tell her that she'd been taken in by these crooks who had stolen the land they squatted. She'd expected that she'd felt that way herself when she'd first walked past the shantytown. But what surprised her more were the message board posts and emails from homeless people who'd been living in their cars, on the streets, in squatted houses or in shanties. to read these. You'd think that half her readership was sleeping rough and getting online at libraries, Starbuckses, and stumbled wireless networks that they accessed with antique laptops on street corners. Kettlewell's coming down to see this, Perry said. Her stomach lurched. She'd gotten the boys in trouble. Is he mad? I cool DNT till I got voicemail at 3 a.m. midnight in San Jose, the hour at which Kettlewell got his mad impulses. He'll be here this afternoon. That jet makes it too easy for him to get around, she said, and stretched out her back. Sitting at her desk all morning answering emails and cleaning up some draft posts before blogging them had her in knots. It was practically lunchtime. Perry, she began, then trailed off. It's all right, he said. I know why you did it. Christ, we wouldn't be where we are if you hadn't written about us. I am in no position to tell you to stop now. He swallowed. The month since the shantytowners had moved in had put 5 years on him. His tan was fading, the wrinkles around his eyes deeper, gray salting his stubbly beard and short hair. But you'll help me with Kettlewell, right? I'll come along and write down what he says, she said. That usually helps. Codicil is supposed to be a new way of doing business. Decentralized. Net savvy, really 21st century. The suck-up tech press and tech-addled bloggers have been trumpeting its triumph over all other modes of commerce. But what does decentralization really mean? On her blog this week, former journalist Suzanne Church reports that the inmates, running the flagship Codicil Asylum in suburban Florida have invited an entire village of homeless squatters to take up residence at their factory premises, describing their illegal homesteading as live work condos that Dr. Seuss might have designed. Codicil Shill Church goes on to describe how this captive live-in audience has been converted to a workforce for Codicil's most profitable unit. Most profitable is a relative term. To date, this unit has turned a profit of about $1.5 million per the last quarterly report. By contrast, the old Kodak's most profitable unit made 20 times that in its last quarter of operation. America has a grand tradition of this kind of indentured living. The coal barons' company towns of the 19th century are the original model for this kind of industrial practice in the USA. Substandard housing and only one employer in town, that's the kind of brave new world that Church's boyfriend Kettlewell has created. A reader writes, I live near the shantytown that was relocated to the Codicil factory in Florida. It was a dangerous slum full of drug dealers. None of the parents in my neighborhood let their kids ride their bikes along the road that passed it by. It was a haven for all kinds of down-and-out trash. There you have it. The future of the American workforce, down-and-out junkie squatters working for starvation wages. Kettlewell, you can let jerks like Freddie run this company. He's just looking to sell banner space. This is how the Brit rags write it's all mean-spirited sniping. Suzanne had never seen Kettlewell so frustrated. His surfer good looks were fading fast. He was getting a little paunch on him and his cheeks were sagging off his bones into the beginnings of jowls. His car had pulled up to the end of the driveway and he'd gotten out and walked through the shantytown with the air of a man in a dream. The truckers who pulled in and out all week picking up orders had occasionally had a curious word at the odd little settlement, but for Suzanne it had all but disappeared into her normal experience. Kettlewell made it strange and even a little outrageous. Just by his stiff, outraged walk through its streets. You think I am letting Freddie drive this decision? He had spittle flecks on the corners of his mouth. Christ. Suzanne, you supposed to be the adult around here. Perry looked up from the floor in front of him, which he had been staring at intently. Suzanne caught his involuntary glare at Kettlewell before he dropped his eyes again. Lester put a big meaty paw on Perry's shoulder. Kettlewell was oblivious. Those people can stay, all right. The shareholders are baying for blood. The fucking liability. Christ, what if one of those places burns down? What if one of them knifes another one? We on the hook for everything they do. We could end up being on the hook for a fucking cholera epidemic. Irrationally, Suzanne burned with anger at Freddie. He had written every venal, bilious word with the hope that it would result in a scene just like this one. And not because he had any substantive objection to what was going on, simply because he had a need to deride that which others hailed. He wasn't afflicting the mighty. Though, he was taking on the very meekest, people who had nothing. including a means of speaking up for themselves. Perry looked up. You've asked me to come up with something new and incredible every 3 to 6 months. Well, this is new and incredible. We've built a living lab on our doorstep for exploring an enormous market opportunity to provide low-cost, sustainable technology for use by a substantial segment of the population who have no fixed address. There are millions of American squatters and billions of squatters worldwide. They have money to spend and no one else is trying to get it from them. Kettlewell thrust his chin forward. How many millions? How much money do they have to spend? How do you know that any of this will make us a single cent? Where's the market research? Was there any? Or did you just invite 100 hobos to pitch their tent out front of my factory on the strength of your half-assed guesses? Lester held up a hand. We don't have any market research. Kettlewell, because we don't have a business manager on the team anymore. Perry's been taking that over as well as his regular work, and he's been working himself sick for you. We flying by the seat of our pants here because you haven't sent us a pilot. You need an MBA to tell you not to turn your workplace into a slum. Kettlewell said. He was boiling. Suzanne very carefully pulled out her pad and wrote this down. It was all she had, but sometimes it was enough. Kettlewell noticed. Get out, he said. I want to talk with these two alone. No, Suzanne said. That's not our deal. I get to document everything. That's the deal. Kettlewell glared at her, and then he deflated. He sagged and took 2 steps to the chair behind Perry's desk and collapsed into it. Put the notebook away. Suzanne. Please. She silently shook her head at him. He locked eyes with her for a moment, then nodded curtly. She resumed writing. Guys, the major shareholders are going to start dumping their stock this week. A couple of pension funds, a merchant bank. It's about 10–15% of the company. When that happens, our ticker price is going to fall by 60% or more. They're going to short us because they don't like what we've done here. Perry said. Christ, that's ridiculous. Kettlewell sighed and put his face in his hands, scrubbed at his eyes. No, Perry, no. They're doing it because they can figure out how to value us. Our business units have an industry high return on investment, but there's not enough of them. We've only signed 1,000 teams and we wanted 10,000, so 90% of the money we had to spend is sitting in the bank at garbage interest rates. We need to soak up that money with big projects, the Hoover Dam, Hong Kong Disneyland, the Big Dig. All we've got are little projects, so it's not our fault then, is it? Lester said. Perry was staring out the window. No, it's not your fault, but this doesn't help. This is a disaster waiting to turn into a catastrophe. Calm down. Landon. Perry said. Calm down for a sec and listen to me. Okay. Kettlewell looked at him and sighed. Go ahead, there are more than 1 billion squatters worldwide. San Francisco has been giving out tents and shopping carts ever since they ran out of shelter beds in the 90s. From Copenhagen to Cape Town, there are more and more people who are going off the grid, often in the middle of cities. Suzanne nodded. They farm Detroit, in the ruins of old buildings. Raise crops and sell them. Chickens, too. Even pigs, there's something there. These people have money, like I said. They buy and sell in the stream of commerce. They often have to buy at a premium because the services and goods available to them are limited. Think of how a homeless person can take advantage of bulk packaged perishables because she doesn't have a fridge. They are the spirit of ingenuity, too. They mod their cars. Caves, anything they can find to be living quarters. They turn RVs into permanent homes. They know more about tents, sleeping bags and cardboard than any UN shelter specialist. These people need housing, goods, appliances. You name it. It's what Jan used to call a greenfield market. No one else knows it's there. You want something you can spend ungodly amounts of money on. This is it. Get every team in the company to come up with products for these people. Soak up every cent they spend. Better us providing them with quality goods at reasonable prices than letting them get ripped off by the profiteers who have a captive market. This plant is a living lab. This is the kind of market intelligence you can buy, right here. We should set up more of these. Invite squatters all over the country to move onto our grounds, test out our products, help us design, build and market them. We can recruit traveling salespeople to go door to door in the shanties and take orders. Shit, man. You talk about the Grameen Bank all the time, why not go into business providing these people with easy microcredit without preying on them the way the banks do? Then we could loan them money to buy things that we sell them that they use to better their lives and earn more money so they can pay us back and buy more things and borrow more money. Kettlewell held up a hand. I like the theory. It's a nice story. But I have to sell this to my board, and they want more than stories. Where can I get the research to back this up? We re it. Perry said. This place, right here. There's no numbers to prove what I am saying is right because everyone who knows it's right is too busy chasing after it and no one else believes it. But right here, if we allowed to do this right here, we can prove it. We've got the capital in our account, we profitable, and we can roll those profits back into more R&D for the future of the company. Suzanne was writing so fast she was getting a hand cramp. Perry had never given speeches like this, even a month before. Jan's leaving had hurt them all, but the growth it had precipitated in Perry was stunning. Kettlewell argued more, but Perry was a steamroller and Suzanne was writing down what everyone said, and that kept it all civil, like a silent camera rolling in the corner of the room. No one looked at her, but she was the thing they were conspicuously not looking at. Francis took the news calmly. Sound business strategy. Basically, it's what I've been telling you to do all along, so I am bound to like it. It took a couple weeks to hive off the home-aware stuff to some of the other Codicel business units. Perry flew a bunch, spending days in Minnesota, Oregon, Ohio, and Michigan overseeing the retooling efforts that would let him focus on his new project. By the time he got back, Lester had retooled their own workspace, converting it to 4 functional areas: communications, shelter, food and entertainment. They were Francis's idea. He said. Francis's gimpy leg was bothering him more and more, but he'd overseen the work from a rolling ergonomic office chair. It's his version of the hierarchy of need stuff he knows for sure we can sell. It was the first time the boys had launched something new without knowing what it was, where they started with a niche and decided to fill it instead of starting with an idea and looking for a niche for it. You're going to underestimate the research time, Francis said during one of their flipchart brainstorms, where they had been covering sheet after sheet with ideas for products they could build. Everyone underestimates research time. Deciding what to make is always harder than making it. He'd been drinking less since he'd gotten involved in the retooling effort, waking earlier, bossing around his young blood posse to get him paper, bricks, tinker toys. He was right. Suzanne steadily recorded the weeks ticking by as the 4 competing labs focus grouped, designed, tested and scrapped all manner of tchotchkes for tramps. As Freddie had dubbed it in a spiraling series of ever more bilious columns. But the press was mostly positive. Camera crews liked to come by and shoot the compound. One time, the pretty black reporter from the night of the fire came by and said very nice things during her stand-up. Her name was Maria and she was happy to talk shop with Suzanne, endlessly fascinated by a real journalist who'd gone permanently slumming on the internet. The problem is that all this stuff is too specialized, it has too many prerequisites. Perry said, staring at a waterproof, cement-impregnated bag that could be filled with a hose, allowed to dry, and used as a self-contained room. This thing is great for refugees, but it's too one-size-fits-all for squatters. They have to be able to heavily customize everything they use to fit into really specialized niches. More squatters had arrived to take up residence with them: families, friends, a couple of dodgy drifters, and a third story was going onto the buildings in the camp. They were even more Dr. Seussian than the first round, idiosyncratic structures that had to be built light to avoid crushing the floors below them, hanging out over the narrow streets, corkscrewing like vines seeking sun. He kept staring, and would have been staring still had he not heard the sirens. 3 blue and white Broward County Sheriff's cars were racing down the access road into their dead mall, sirens howling, lights blazing. They screeched to a halt at the shantytown's edge and their doors flew open. 4 cops moved quickly into the shantytown, while 2 more worked the radios, sheltering by the cars. Jesus Christ, Perry said. He ran for the door, but Suzanne grabbed him. Don't run toward armed cops, she said. Don't do anything that looks threatening. Slow down, Perry. He took a couple deep breaths. Then he looked around his lab for a while, frantically muttering. Where the fuck did I put it?